Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Back in 2019, I was lucky enough to buy a house from my uncle at half its market value. He was retiring to his lakeside home and wanted to help me out. There was just one catch. The neighborhood had a homeowner association, but my uncle assured me our house wasn't part of it since he never joined. The day after I moved in, there was a knock at my door. Standing there was an older woman with graying blonde hair and way too much makeup, holding a welcome basket. She introduced herself as the homeowner association president and asked to come in, saying we had some forms to fill out. I immediately told her I wouldn't be joining the association. Her fake smile vanished instantly. She tried to tell me I didn't have a choice, claiming all new homeowners were required to join. I shut that down quickly, telling her I knew that wasn't true since my uncle had never joined, and I made it clear I was prepared to call a lawyer if needed. She called me a thorn in the neighborhood and warned me she'd be back. True to her word, she started sending letters about my grass being too tall or my driveway needing sweeping. Basic home maintenance I was already doing anyway. The neighbors who were association members made their feelings clear too. They told me straight up that they'd never accept me until I joined the association. I simply replied that it was fine and we didn't have to be friends. Things stayed tense but manageable until early 2020 when the pandemic hit. Being somewhat paranoid by nature, I ordered supplies early. 12 packs of toilet paper, 20 bottles of hand sanitizer, 3 boxes of latex gloves, some face masks, and 20 large cans of disinfectant spray. I even grabbed extra small packs of toilet paper and off-brand supplies when I saw them in stores, thinking friends or family might need them. I was right. When the shelves went bare and people started fighting over supplies, I had plenty. I shared with close friends and family who needed help. But then the neighbors started showing up. They offered to pay for some of my supplies, but I refused, reminding them that they'd made it clear we weren't friends when I wouldn't join the association. I explained that if I gave supplies to one neighbor, they'd all want some, and I'd quickly run out. They didn't like that answer. They'd yell from the sidewalk, but I ignored them. Then Karen showed up again. She tried to demand that I share my supplies with the neighborhood, saying it wasn't a request but an order. I told her to buzz off, explaining that this had nothing to do with her or the association. I pointed out that even if I was a member, which I wasn't, she couldn't make me share my personal property. She stormed off while threatening that I'd regret not being a good neighbor. A few days later, while at work, my security cameras alerted me to someone breaking in. The footage showed a woman in a spandex suit wearing a hockey mask. I called the police immediately and rushed home. When I arrived, the police were putting Karen in handcuffs. She had used a crowbar to break open my back door and was throwing my supplies into the yard where her kids were collecting everything in bags. She got 6 months in jail and probation. Her husband came by later to apologize and confided that he'd been planning to divorce her anyway. He revealed that she had quite a record with the law and Child Protective Services got involved since she used her kids to help steal. He filed for divorce and got full custody. The association elected a new president, and Karen's husband and I actually became friendly. He helped me replace the door his ex-wife destroyed, and we occasionally share a beer. The whole situation brought an unexpected friendship. I ran into Karen recently at a supermarket in another city where she works as a bagger now. The moment she saw me, she gave me the dirtiest look and wouldn't make eye contact again. I just smiled, knowing her entitled attitude had cost her everything. Her family, her position, and her reputation. All over some toilet paper and cleaning supplies she could have just asked for nicely like my real friends did. I want to share a story about my uncle, who's been like a second father to me. He's always been the kind of guy who works hard for what he has and takes pride in his possessions. I spent countless weekends at his place, helping him maintain his boats and cars. He taught me everything I know about mechanics. Back in 2000, he finally saved enough to buy his dream house, a beautiful new construction on a half-acre lot. The neighborhood was still being developed, but he loved that his property had this unique layout where the front was level with the street while the backyard dropped down like a cliff to another road below. He's always been a car and boat enthusiast, so the wide driveway was perfect for his hobby. Everything was great for about 6 months, until some random person knocked on his door one afternoon. They introduced themselves as a representative of the new Homeowners Association and tried to hand him an application to join. My uncle politely declined, saying he wasn't interested. The person seemed confused but left. My uncle tossed the application in his drawer and went about his business. But that was just the beginning. A week later, another knock came at the door. This time it was a woman who would later become known as Karen throughout the neighborhood. She immediately started complaining about his boat and cars in the driveway, saying they were violating Homeowners Association rules. When my uncle explained he wasn't a member of the Homeowners Association, she got really worked up. She insisted that everyone in the neighborhood was a member, refusing to accept his explanation. This became a regular occurrence. Different neighbors would show up, complaining about his vehicles. Some were polite, others were downright hostile. Then one day, he came home to find a vinyl fence installed along his back property line, a fence he never approved or wanted. The Homeowners Association started sending him threatening letters about moving his boat to the backyard. The problem was, there was literally no way to get the boat back there. The house's design made it impossible to maneuver around the sides, and now this unauthorized fence blocked access from the back road. Trying to be reasonable, my uncle decided to create a gate in the fence. He was in the middle of removing a section when police cars pulled up. The responding officer told him they'd received a call about property destruction. My uncle tried explaining that the fence was installed on his property without his permission, but the officer wasn't interested in that side of the story. Instead, the officer warned him to restore the fence by the end of the day, or they'd have to take action. Frustrated but not wanting legal trouble, my uncle fixed the fence and put his boat back in the driveway. That's when the fines started arriving, hundreds of dollars every week for violations. He ignored them and they kept piling up. When the fines hit $10,000, the Homeowners Association sued him. My uncle, being the fighter he is, countersued for harassment and demanding access to his backyard from the back street. In court, the Homeowners Association representatives showed up with their fancy maps and documents. Their lawyer made a big show of pointing out how my uncle's property was clearly within their boundaries, arguing that whether he joined or not was irrelevant. He was subject to their rules by location alone. My uncle presented his evidence, original mortgage documents, proof he bought before the Homeowners Association existed, and the knockout punch, that blank application with their security stamp still sitting in his drawer. The judge's ruling was perfect. He declared that the property was clearly grandfathered and not subject to Homeowners Association rules. He ordered the association to remove their fence immediately and pay my uncle $10,000 in damages for harassment. But my uncle wasn't done. After winning, he installed a chain-link fence with a huge gate in the back. Then, in his most magnificent move yet, he paved over his entire front yard, all legal according to city code. Now his boats and cars are displayed more prominently than ever. People still try to complain about his property, not realizing he's legally untouchable. Last week, someone left a note about his eyesore of a yard. He framed it and added it to his collection. My uncle's still there today, his property standing out like a beacon of defiance in a sea of cookie-cutter conformity. Every time I visit, he's usually working on one of his vehicles in the front yard, giving a friendly wave to the scowling neighbors walking past. One day, my older brother offered to sell me his condo at a great price. He had to move across the state for a new job, and the Homeowners Association wouldn't let him rent it out. Being young and excited about owning my first property, I jumped at the opportunity without realizing what I was getting myself into. The problem started about 6 months after I moved in. I noticed some concerning gaps between the walls and ceiling, and occasionally I'd hear unsettling popping sounds coming from the attic at night. Like any responsible homeowner, I sent messages to the Homeowners Association reporting these issues and requesting an inspection. 2 weeks passed with no response. I tried again, sending another message explaining that the gaps were getting worse. Still nothing. That's when I met my neighbor, a retired investigative reporter who had been dealing with the same issues. She told me that they'd been ignoring these foundation problems for years, showing me all the documentation she'd collected. She suggested we work together to fight against them. Then came the first surprise, a $3,500 special assessment for foundation repairs. It turned out 8 other buildings had similar problems. They started fixing some buildings, specifically the ones where board members lived, then mysteriously stopped all repairs. The property manager was infuriating. When I brought up the issues, she tried claiming there were no foundation problems in my building at all. I responded by telling her about the 2 professional estimates I had showing the foundation had sunk 3 inches, mentioning that one quote was for $10,000 just to fix my corner. I asked if she'd like me to forward these to her. Suddenly her tone changed, and she mumbled something about needing to look into it further. The retired reporter had been busy gathering evidence and making calls. She discovered the association had fired 2 previous property management companies who had insisted on addressing the foundation issues. The board had been sweeping these problems under the rug for over a decade. She told me she'd contacted a lawyer who specialized in homeowners association cases, and then excitedly mentioned what the fire department had found. The fire inspection revealed that the roof support beams were literally breaking. When code enforcement came through, they slapped the association with hefty fines. Still, the board dragged their feet until the city manager got involved, threatening legal action if they didn't fix the issues immediately. Just when we thought things couldn't get more outrageous, we discovered the board trying to secretly pass a $12,000 special assessment per unit. Some vigilant resident found out and posted flyers on everyone's doors. The next association meeting was absolute chaos. Residents were shouting about how they'd tried to sneak this past everyone, demanding to know where the money from the previous 2 assessments had gone. When the board president tried to calm everyone down by saying they were just trying to address the repairs, another resident pointed out how they'd ignored the problems for 10 years and only fixed their own buildings first. The meeting devolved into near-riot conditions. The $12,000 assessment was unanimously rejected, but we still got hit with a third special assessment of $2,500. The foundation company finally came in and revealed that in some units, the foundation had sunk 6 inches. In the end, the association was forced to fix everything, the foundation and the roof, but only after the city threatened legal action. I managed to sell my condo as soon as the repairs were complete. The entire board was voted out in the next election, and the property management company was fired. The retired reporter published a scathing expose in the local paper about the whole ordeal, which led to a state investigation into the board's financial dealings over the past decade. My brother still feels guilty about selling me the condo, but I tell him it was actually an educational experience. I learned how to fight corruption, made some great allies, and got a crash course in property law. These days, whenever I hear someone say they're thinking about buying a condo, I have quite the story to tell them. After 15 years of living in apartments and saving every penny we could, my wife and I finally had enough for a down payment on our dream house. We'd been searching for months when we found this beautiful, colonial-style home in a peaceful neighborhood. The previous owners had maintained it perfectly, and the price was right within our budget. What sealed the deal for us was the fact that there was no homeowners association. We'd heard horror stories from friends about power-hungry HOA boards making their lives miserable. We moved in December 2018, and everything was perfect for the first 9 months. We repainted the house a warm beige color, planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, and even installed a small fountain. All things that typically need HOA approval in other neighborhoods. Then came September 2019. A group of neighbors decided to form a homeowners association. That's when our peaceful life started to unravel. The first visit came from the newly elected HOA president and vice president. They showed up at our door with documents in hand, excitedly announcing the formation of the new HOA and telling us to sign the papers. We politely declined, explaining that we weren't interested in joining. The vice president tried to persuade us by saying everyone else was joining, but my wife reminded them that we had specifically chosen this house because it didn't have an HOA. They left looking disappointed. Over the next few months, different board members would show up at our door with what they called new and improved versions of their contracts, each time becoming more aggressive in their approach. One evening, the treasurer showed up and tried to guilt trip us. He claimed our non-participation was affecting property values and that we needed to think about our neighbors. When I pointed out that we maintained our property well and had the right not to join, he accused us of being selfish about the whole situation. After their sixth attempt in 2 months, I'd had enough. I warned them that if anyone came to my door about joining the HOA again, I would call the police for harassment. That gave us about a month of peace before they changed tactics. We started receiving fines in our mailbox. $100 for our garden beds being too tall, $150 for our fountain not being approved, $200 for our house color being non-compliant. That's when I contacted a lawyer. My lawyer was fantastic. She helped us draft a formal letter of non-participation, which we got signed by ourselves and the HOA board. I made multiple copies and stored them in different places, including my lawyer's office. Thank God for that foresight. Fast forward to September 2020 and I found a court summons in my mailbox. The HOA was suing us for over $5,000 in unpaid fines. I immediately called my lawyer. She assured me not to worry and just told me to bring my copy of the contract to court. When our court date arrived, I was nervous but prepared. The HOA's lawyer presented their case first, showing their evidence, a clearly doctored version of our contract showing we had agreed to join. They hadn't even done a good job with the alteration. You could still see the outline of white out under bright light. The judge asked them pointedly why, if we were members from the beginning, did they have records of multiple attempts to get us to join. The HOA president stumbled over his words, weakly claiming they were just trying to get us to be more active members. I then presented my pristine copy of the contract, along with dated photographs of all their notices to join that they'd left at our door over the months. I also had recordings from our doorbell camera showing their multiple visits and attempts at coercion. The judge was livid. Not only did she throw out their case, but she also ordered a criminal investigation into the HOA board for document forgery and harassment. The HOA was forced to disband, and 3 board members ended up with criminal records. The former HOA president moved out 2 months later. She tried to pull the same stunt in her new neighborhood, but was caught before she could even get the HOA formed. Some people never learn. Now our neighborhood is back to being the peaceful place we originally moved into, and we're finally getting to enjoy our dream home the way we always wanted. The aftermath of the HOA disbandment brought some interesting changes to our neighborhood. Many neighbors who had reluctantly joined the HOA came by to thank us for standing our ground. Apparently, the board had been making everyone's lives miserable with ridiculous regulations, like requiring all holiday decorations to be taken down within 24 hours of the holiday, and demanding that all garbage bins be painted the same specific shade of gray. One elderly couple from down the street brought us a homemade pie and told us how the HOA had tried to fine them $500 for having a wheelchair ramp installed without approval, even though it was medically necessary. Another neighbor shared that he had been threatened with fines for having his work van parked in his own driveway, which he needed for his plumbing business. The criminal investigation revealed even more shocking details. The board had been keeping 2 sets of books, one showing the legitimate expenses and another padded with fake maintenance costs. They had planned to use this extra money for what they called neighborhood improvements, which mysteriously all seemed to be centered around their own properties. These days, instead of dealing with HOA drama, our neighborhood has started a voluntary community group that meets once a month for cookouts and actually helps each other out. We coordinate yard sales, organize holiday events, and even started a neighborhood watch program, all without forcing anyone to participate or pay fees. It's exactly the kind of community we hope to join when we first bought our house. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.